Hello everyone. Katsuhiro Harada, the creator of Tekken, says that Gigas has the best win rate of any character in this game online. And I don't doubt that that's true. I'm pretty sure that Namco compiled complete data on all online matches, and they use that very valuable information as a basis when they make decisions about the game. But then you talk to somebody who actually plays Tekken at a reasonably advanced level, and most players seem to agree that this is actually a very bad character, so what gives? Well, I recently picked Gigas back up. He was one of the first characters I played back in the arcades, and then in the very early days of Season 1. And having played him a lot in the last few weeks, that sort of information on Gigas, it kind of makes perfect sense to me, and I want to try and explain why in this video. I've learned two important things about Gigas in these last few weeks. I made a tier list, or a kind of tier list-ish video a while ago where I talked about the worst characters in this game. And in that video I said that Gigas is probably kind of underestimated and actually quite good. One thing I've learned is that I was wrong about that, and this is actually one of the worst characters in the game by a margin. Maybe not quite as bad as Katarina in my opinion, but sort of comparable to Lars. And actually really quite weak. Another thing that I've learned is that I think this is one of the best and most inspired character designs in this game, and I'm sort of desperate for this design to be carried forward. I actually really kind of love Gigas. I think we have a bunch of fun ideas in here, and he's quickly turning into one of my favorite characters in the game. He's a bit of a meme, but he's really cool, and you could tweak this in a couple of small ways and end up with one of the most fun and well-balanced characters in this game. It's probably not going to be happening in Tekken 7. I don't expect this game to be updated much more at all, but if we do get future Gigas, there's so much potential here. So let's break all of that down a little bit. I think the reason we see data indicating that Gigas has the best win rate of any character, but most advanced players seem to agree that he sucks. The reason that happens is I think this might be the best character in the game for completely stomping inexperienced players. He's very, very, very good at that. He's insanely good at that. But the thing is, once you start running into players who know just a little bit about how to deal with, not even specifically with Gigas and the Gigas matchup, but just people who have some serious fundamentals, he kind of runs into a wall and stops working in a lot of ways, and you're left with a tiny and very risky move list for you to work with, and then you have to try and make some sort of magic happen with that. And I have to say, I have so much respect and love for all the players out there who have been making it happen with Gigas all these years. I hear a lot about a player called Emperor, who's, according to Main Man, the best player in all of Sweden, and I think he's a Gigas main. I haven't had the privilege of watching a lot of his matches yet, but the few that I've seen, it's just amazing to see people make this character really, explode and blossom. I'm very sad that apparently Gigas Thickus, the content creator and streamer, has recently quit this game. I hope he comes back because I just, like I said, have a lot of love and respect for the people who play this character. It's not an easy time once you start running into pretty advanced players. So when Namco made this character, and we know this, we have information on this, the philosophy and the sort of design idea was, what if we have a big heavy character who is terrifying to attempt to block against, who you just don't want to block against? What would that be like? Well, the way they implemented that idea into the game, and that's a great idea and a fun idea that you can do a lot of stuff with. It's an inspired idea that I like for this game, right? Well, one thing that they did was they gave him charge up moves and a stance that allow you to walk people into corners really quickly, which is a really cool and unique idea. Stuff like this where you can charge moves up, you expose yourself for a tiny bit, but then if they block or get hit, but specifically if they block, right, you get to pressure and walk them into corners. And then the other thing that they did is they gave you one of the most powerful throws in the game. and throws are unblockable but breakable, but they are unblockable. And so, it says in the tips that show up on the loading screen in this game, use throws against people who are blocking too much because they can't block throws, right? And this overkill throw works specifically at the wall, right? So you're supposed to walk people into dark corners, and then you're supposed to use this to threaten them and do this massive amount of damage. And it is a lot of damage, 70 damage at the wall. It's massive, massive. And I love the fact that it is that big, because it kind of needs to be to make this character design tick. The problem with this, right, is that Gigas has no opportunity whatsoever to mix his throws, because they haven't given him any other throw that he can mix overkill with. And they tried to remedy this by giving him the overkill throw out of his setup golem stance. It's a recent change to the character. This does absolutely nothing for him whatsoever. This is something that they might as well not have put in the game, because the problem with overkill is that it's way too easy to react to and break normally. And when you telegraph it by doing it out of a stance, you just make that even worse. So the throw out of a stance is almost entirely useless. And when you play against very decent players, they are going to have pretty much a 100% break rate against this throw. They will break it all the time. I have shitty reaction speed as a player. It's like one of my big weaknesses when I play this game, and even I break this throw pretty much every single time when I play online. It's very interesting though what happens when people do not break this throw. It turns into easily one of the most powerful moves in the game, because it's an 11 frame unblockable that does 70 damage. Stick that on any character in this game, and it's obviously the best character in the game, more or less. I want to show you a clip here quickly, because I was playing last night in a long death match. I think we played like a dozen games against this very decent Noctis player, and this was like a person who plays this game really quite well. New combos, new punishment, and all the rest of it, but for some reason that day just did not want to break overkill. And I noticed that as we were playing, and we ended up having a lot of rounds that looked a little bit like this. I just wanted to show that as an example of how the power level of this character really changes once people just let you do overkill. And again, this was a good player, and we had a bunch of good matches, and it was really fun, but for some reason the overkill break just wasn't there that evening, and that can happen to anybody. But it's very rare, and after a certain rank, like I said, most people have pretty much a 100% break ratio against this, unless you get very sneaky with how you place it. You can do it at disadvantage, you can do it on an advancing opponent and try and catch them attacking, kind of like a counter hit throw, and then hopefully they're just busy with their fingers and they don't have time to do the break, and you can get some damage that way. But for the most part, this throw just breaks down against good players, and when it comes out of the stance, it just sucks really, really hard, right? But what are some of these other tools that you can use as a Gigas player to absolutely destroy people who don't know how to play against him? Well, the main pressure string that we use these days is the down forward for 1+2, which might seem absolutely fantastic. Second hit is a massive counter hit launcher. It's mid, and the second hit is plus on block. But most people know that you can actually stick a fast move in the window between these two hits, and it makes you very susceptible to good 10 frame moves and really good fast counter hits. So for example, I just happened to pick Jack as my opponent here, but if I were playing against a Jack and they saw this string once or twice, they have now prepared that forward 2, and it's going to be locked and loaded, and the next time I'm going to eat a massive counter hit for trying to apply this probably, and now I have to start hitting the brakes in terms of the second hit and really worry about applying my pressure string, and it's not going to work as well anymore. So that kind of breaks down. I played a match against Sephi Black a couple of days ago on Gigas. So now we're going from good players to like a world-class player. And he, the first time I applied this string, he did a 10 frame move perfectly the first time. The second time, and the third time, and then I pretty much stopped using this string. So you can imagine the frustration of a Gigas player when the better your opponent gets, the less your character just is able to compete. When a lot of good characters in this game have serious mix-ups that just work at any level because they're true and they actually function, you know. This is another move that you can use to absolutely stomp people early in this game. This is down 4-3, 1+2. It's essentially a 13 frame counter hit launcher for massive, massive damage, which sounds very, very good, right? And you can tell the damage is insanity when people are doing a lot of slow big lows at the beginning of rounds. You party hard with this and you do all that damage, but again, it breaks down. The second hit is launch punishable at -16. The third hit is reasonably reactable and a duckable high, so you get launched for applying that as well, and good players do this on the first attempt of the string very often. You can't just throw it and see what happens. You have to either get lucky or have insanely hard reads to make these things work, right? So a lot of trouble. The down back 2 I think is pretty much your best low. It is a very good move. You've got good range, you've got some counter hit properties, you can get really good damage here. You have a bunch of guaranteed follow-ups on the counter hit, right? And you have high crush. If it didn't have high crush, the move would be useless. Luckily it does. But 23 frames to impact is on the slow side and sort of slides into the reactable range, especially against good players, and the low is -14 on block, and that creates a bunch of issues in terms of matchups, and Gigas has a bunch of issues in terms of matchups. There are some matchups where you just do so poorly that you're just trying to, you know, claw your way through it and survive. And then some other matchups where you do a lot better, to be fair. So for example, and I think you can already sort of tell where I'm going with this, you're very susceptible to good 10 frame moves. Your best low is -14 on block, and to add insult to injury, your fastest while standing launcher is 18 frames and way too slow to actually launch a high that you've ducked if it has good recovery speed. In other words, Gigas just can't beat Kazuya, and that's a character that you're going to see a lot online, and it's just a nightmare matchup. So what happens when you are playing against these players who know how to play against Gigas, or just how to know how to play well in general? Well, then you get limited to a tiny repertoire of sort of usable moves, and you have to try and place them so deliberately and so well that you manage to make it through, right? And you're fighting for your life. 442 is the best move the character has, I think, by a margin. It's not quite as good as it needs to be, but it is safe on block, which is fantastic. If it isn't safe on block, you can't use it. It is safe on block, it becomes amazing. It hits grounded in some situations. I actually wrote them down. It's in face down feet towards and in face up feet towards, which is very good because that's the most common knockdown situation in the game. And the fact that that exists means that you actually get some mileage off of your running too as well in terms of Oki. You can create pressure that way. You can set up a throw mix-up. Even though you don't have a throw mix-up, you can't mix your throws because you don't have enough of them. You have a fantastic 15 frame whiff punisher, and you know the backdash isn't great, but it works, so you can whiff punish very hard with the character. If you're very good and fast, you can use this at a medium range and get damage as well. I don't think it's very good. And then your lows, apart from the down back 2, I think down 3 works. I think it's fast enough. I like the follow-up. Sometimes you do it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you throw in a throw or whatever, an overkill, and you get some mileage off of that. The low pokes sort of work, and then just very decent jab range. So that stuff all works. You have a mix-up stance, sort of, with a character called a Golem, and this stance just isn't very good at all. The fact that it has the jump back kind of redeems it a little bit, but all you have from the stance really is you have a mid that is ±0, which is kind of cool, and it's a high damage. You know, you can do fun stuff for like wall trapping stuff with this at the wall. You can create Oki like this, which is cool. And then you have a high crushing high launcher that is -13. But there's no real mix-up here. You can do overkill from the stance, but like I explained, it's completely useless. And so what you have here is pretty much Negan's intimidation stance before they buffed it and actually gave it a low. This stance needs a low. Well, they did give it a low, but it's trust me, it's dog shit. and the extension is dog shit too. It's just really risky, and you get launched a lot for doing this. I mean, you can do the first hit and then follow up with something else, and don't finish the string. Threaten finishing the string and make them hesitate, and then do something. You can make it work, but again, it's plastic. There's nothing solid here. You can do down back two from the stance, but you have to wait. When Gigas goes into Golem, you can see he's kind of bobbing. He can only get access to his move list outside of Golem after the second bob. So if I spam a down back two out, he just does a Golem 2. If I wait for him to bob once and then go back down, now I can do an actual mix-up low from this stance. But the fact that I have to wait to be able to do it defeats the purpose. If you're going to mix from a stance with some sort of advantage, you have to do it right away. Otherwise, you don't have advantage. So the stance is complete dog shit. It's going to do a lot of damage and work against some people. You know, if they don't know that this high crushes on the way in, you launch them and you do a bunch of damage, and there you go. The combo damage is extremely high, right? So you only need to get it right once or twice with this character and you win. But you're not going to be able to do that against somebody who knows what to do. And so I think that's what creates this thing with Gigas where you're doing 4-4-2 and trying to survive against good players, but in the lower ranks and, you know, against people who are a little bit less experienced, fair enough, he's probably the best character in the game. So what should you do if you're Namco and you're trying to balance this character becomes the interesting question, because of course the game isn't only for people who have been playing for a long time and aren't in really high ranks. It's for everybody who enjoys it and decides to buy it, right? Well, I don't think there's any problem with actually buffing Gigas in serious ways, giving him real throw mix-ups and improving all these tools to where they can be actually useful at a high level, because okay, he's gonna stomp people in lower ranks even more, but that sort of incentivizes them to learn how to actually deal with those things, and then the people who get boosted by Gigas to a certain level are going to start running into people who deal with those tools, and then they have to get more creative and they have to play in a more nuanced way that actually works. So I think when you are balancing the game, it's not a problem to take advanced level play into consideration and having that as your basis for, like, if you're going to make a tier list and you want to know what character is good, you want to know what character is good at a high level. If you want to know what character is bad, you want to know what character is bad at a high level, because that's where everybody's heading. That's the direction that everybody goes in, right? And if somebody is really struggling because they're inexperienced and they're not getting the higher ranks, they're in a process of learning that, and they're heading towards that direction, you know, where we can start to really talk about what the characters can actually do in a serious competitive environment. And I think that's the most interesting. So that's not me saying that, you know, I think it's not worth considering more casual players when we're balancing the game. I'm saying that I think it's sort of better in the long run for everybody if you consider more advanced play when you're making balancing decisions about the game. And it's less interesting to look at what win percentage does Gigas have globally in all these matches and then saying, well, he's obviously very good and there's no reason for us to buff him. It's not that simple. But like I said, I think Gigas is a fantastic design. Sometimes he can be the most frustrating character in the game to play because you just get shut down by people. But when you do make it happen and when you hit with these moves, a bunch of fun ideas, a big heavy character who charges up attacks, who's terrifying to block against, who definitely should have a throw mix-up, this stance. There's so much fun, cool stuff in here. It just works. It really does. I love the tubes. The first time I saw him, this character leaked before he was actually released, and I was like, wow, he's obviously some sort of experiment where they've been pumping him with stuff and he's escaped and he's broken out of some sort of machine and you know, gone rogue, and he's still sort of semi-attached to that thing with all these cables. I just think it's evocative and fun. And Gigas is really awesome. I think he should be the other grappler in the next game. He should be, you know, we've got King in Armor King, and then we should have Gigas, and he should be, if he's going to be a character who's terrifying to block against, he should have a real throw mix-up, and these stances should really work. I haven't mentioned it yet, but these stances, there's some stuff in here, you can do some fun stuff with it, but it's because the high is unblockable, it's kind of a mix-up, but not really. They're a little bit too easy to deal with. The Rage Drive version is very easy for people to shut down. They're super prepared to jump and do aerial stuff to deal with it. They parry, they duck, they interrupt, they counter hit. So it can work, but it also exposes you, and the character is just extremely high risk, even when you're trying to do your best moves. This thing is steppable to the right. Don't know if I mentioned that. I think I said it's not as good as it needs to be. It needs to not be that steppable to the right. Then it becomes truly amazing, and you can do it all day. But, you know, people step it, so there you go. So some thoughts on Gigas, but like I said, I really love this character, and I think I'm going to do a full, like, an ultimate guide on him the way I did for Zafina a while back. Just you know, a love letter to this character in Tekken 7 and the people who really want to play him. A lot of nostalgia. One of like the first and you know, most like interesting characters to me in this game. Give him a shot and have a lot of fun with him while you still have the chance in this game if you haven't already. And you know, these strings and these tools that I've mentioned, if you want to maintain a high win rate at lower ranks, just start abusing them, because you know, evidently people don't quite know what to do until you get to a certain level. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoy Gigas. I hope you're playing him, and I think I want people to keep on playing him and not quit the game and give up. And I really hope we see him in Tekken 8. We know for a fact that that game is coming now, more or less. And God, I hope he's in it. I don't think he will be, but I really hope he is. Thank you again, and I'll see you guys very soon.